The War for Mansoul by John Bunyan, as told by Ethel Barrett. Copyright 1998, Christian Light Publications Incorporated, Harrisonburg, Virginia. Further conspiracy in the pit. These were days of clouds and of thick darkness in Mansoul. They had been dark and cloudy ever since Mr. Godly Fear's outburst that awful night at the banquet. After that night, all Mansoul was awake. For it was true. Emmanuel had left Mansoul. He had departed from them as they had turned from him, gradually. Now that they saw how foolish they had been, they began to comprehend what the company and prattle of Mr. Connell's security had done, and what a desperate plight his swaggering words had brought to Mansoul. In the first burst of repentance, they had burned Mr. Connell's security in his mansion with them. Then they began to look for Emmanuel. They sought him, but they found him not. First they thought of the Lord High Secretary. Of course he could tell them where Emmanuel was and how he might direct a petition to him. He knew everything. He would give them power and wisdom and intelligence with this prince. All they had to do was knock on the door of the prince's abode in the heart of the castle. But he would not see them. Then they thought of sermons. Of course, that would do it. They assembled and listened to Conscience preach, and oh, how he did thunder and lighten the day. His text was from the prophet Jonah. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. And he preached with such authority that when the sermon was over, they were scarcely able to go to their homes or betake themselves to their employment the week after. They were sermon-smitten. But it did no lasting good. Then they tried fasting to humble themselves for being so wicked against the great Shaddai and his son. But it was no use. Then they got Boanerges, the great man himself, to preach. His text was, "Cut it down, why cumbereth it the ground?" And a very smart sermon he made upon the place. First he showed that the problem was that the fig tree was barren. Then he showed the sentence was utter desolation. Then he showed by whose authority the sentence was pronounced, and was none other than Shaddai himself. And he was so pertinent in his application that poor Mansoul trembled anew, and it kept awake those who were roused by Conscience's sermon the week before. But it did not help. Then they drew up a petition to their offended prince, asking that he, in his favor and grace, would turn again to them, and sent it to the court of Shaddai by Lord Understanding. But the gates were closed. Then they counseled with godly fear, with mourning and weeping, and he told them to keep on trying, for it was a way of the wise Shaddai to make men wait and exercise patience. They were the ones who had wronged him. They should try again and again and again, and be willing to wait for him to answer. They did. But it was hard to wait. They had the good intentions. They had repented with their customary enthusiasm. But after the first burst of fervor was over, the awful truth was they could not hang on. A great weakness spread over the town of Mansoul like an epidemic, and most of the inhabitants were greatly afflicted. The men of war languished, and worse still, the captains. Captain Faith, Good Hope, Love, Guilelessness, Patience, all became weak and ill. Oh, how many pale faces, weak hands, feeble knees, and staggering men were now seen to walk the streets of Mansoul. Some were groaning, some panting, and yonder lay those who were ready to faint. And their garments, the snow-white robes Emmanuel had given them, were in a sorry condition. Some were rent, some were torn, and some hung so loosely upon them that the next bush they passed by was ready to pluck them off. But worst of all, their morale was at rock bottom. They would have been an easy prey for enemies lurking within, or for invasion from without. Lord Anger came out of the front door of his apartment. Well, actually, he slithered out of a crevice in Mansoul's wall down near Fieldgate. It was a poor excuse for a lodging, but he had lived there ever since Prince Emmanuel had taken over the town. He had managed to make it do while he waited for better days to come back again. Once on the street, he looked both ways to check for possible foes lurking about, and, finding none, he pulled his hat down, his cloak collar up, and slithered uptown toward the market square. On his way, he stopped by to pick up his old friend Lord Deceit, who came squiggling up from his hold under the wall in answer to Anger's low whistle. The two of them walked on, talking in undertones and sneaking furtive glances about, their eyes darting into the nearest crack at the thought of any opposition. Their vigilance was unnecessary. There was no one around to cause them any trouble. "Well, my lords," they started for a moment, but it was only the old and dangerous villain, Mr. Covetousness, standing under a street sign. The three of them chatted a while, then went up the street called Vile Hill, toward the den of Mr. Mischief, where the meeting was. These meetings were usually well attended. There was little excuse for absenteeism. The Diabolans who met were lively and enthusiastic and in extremely good health. Lord Adultery, Lord Murder, Lord Lasciviousness, Lord Evil Eye, Lord Blasphemy, and a host of others. Some of them had come with Diabolus when he invaded and took the town. Some of them were there by means of mixed marriages. All of them had their holds and dens and lurking places in, under, or about the wall of the town. The good prince had granted a commission to Lord Wilbywell and others to seek, take, secure, and destroy any or all of the rascals that they could lay hands on. And, with their characteristic enthusiasm, they had started out with much fuss and ceremony to root out every lurking Diabolan, to kill him without mercy. But before they'd well started, complacency had set in. The Diabolans had things well calculated. They simply hid in their tracks when the squeeze play was on, ventured forth when the pressure was off, comforted each other, and admonished each other to not be weary in evil-doing, and waited for a time to strike. The time to strike was now. The light from the sputtering candle in Mischief's den sent their shadows shooting up the sides of the wall and halfway across the ceiling as they crouched on the floor. They were a weird lot. "We could offer ourselves as servants," said Lord Lasciviousness. "Get into their homes, correct them from within." Not at this time," said Lord Murder. "Mansoul is in a kind of a rage right now, weak as it is. Carnal security just ensnared them. Once bitten, twice shy. I veto that." "What do you suggest, then?" said Mr. Mischief. "That we be wise as foxes. They're under orders to kill us as we are. Dead, we can do them no harm. While we live, we may. I'm for playing safe." "And what is safe?" said Mischief. "I'm not sure," said Murder. So the meeting was thrown open for discussion. In the end, they decided to write to Diabolus and ask his advice in the matter. A few days later, Mr. Profane hurried over the plains, whistling his favorite dirge in F minor. The letter that had been composed in the den of Mischief was safely tucked away beneath his cloak. He was still whistling when he finally came to Hellgate Hill. He knocked at the brazen gates for entrance. After much horrible squeaking and grinding, the gate was opened, and Cerberus, the porter, stuck his head out. "Why, Mr. Profane, what brings you here?" Cerberus's face was contorted with glee. "May I see his lordship at once?" said Profane impatiently. "Why, yes. Come in, come in, come in. Welcome back, Mr. Profane." Suddenly Profane let out a horrible "Oops, sorry. Didn't mean to close the gate on your hand. Come right this way, sir. His lordship is in the main den." And he led the way through tortuous passageways until, "Tidings, my lord, from Mansoul, from your trusty friends in Mansoul," cried Profane, and he and Diabolus fell upon each other, slapping backs and exchanging all the routine greetings of the pit. "I have a letter here," began Profane, when he could disentangle himself. He fished for it, started to hold it aloft, but Diabolus snatched it from his hand. "Letter?" he cried. "Ah, pardon me, I didn't mean to scratch you when I grabbed it. What have we here?" He ripped it open and began to read, muttering to himself. "To our great lord, the Prince Diabolus, dwelling below in the infernal cave. O great father and mighty Prince Diabolus, we, the true Diabolans yet remaining in Mansoul, cannot endure the town with content and quiet without you. The reason for this letter is that we are not altogether without hope that this town may be yours again." Diabolus broke off reading. "Porter, Cerberus, call Beelzebub, Apollyon, Electo, all the rest of the personnel from all parts of the den. They'll want to hear this. Greatly declined. Oh, where was I? Oh, yes, here we are. For it is greatly declined from its Prince Emmanuel. He has departed, and though they send and send, here you are. Crouch, all of you, you'll be interested in this. Polly and Beelzebub, the rest of you, you all know profane. Emmanuel has left Mansoul. Listen to this. Though they send and send and send and send after him, to return to them they cannot prevail nor get good words from him. Now this is good. Oh, this is good. There has been of late great sickness and faintings among them, especially the lords, captains, and chief gentry of the place. We only who are diabolans by nature are well, lively, and strong. All in all, we feel that they lie open to your hand and power. He glanced around to see how they were taking the good news, and satisfied, went back to reading. If, therefore, you wish, with your horrible cunning, to come and attempt to take Mansoul again, send us word, and we shall do our utmost to deliver it into your hand. Send us your suggestions in a few words, and we are ready to follow your counsel, to the hazarding of our lives and all we have. Given under our hands the day and date above written after a close consultation at the house of Mr. Mischief, who is yet alive and hath... He did not wait to finish. I've been hoping for this. Oh, I've been hoping for this. Porter, have dead man's bell rung for joy, without stopping and loud. I think best in the midst of a lot of noise.